Christ. Among the extraordinary personages who have enriched the ethical systems of the world, the name Apollonius of Tyana stands out with exceptional luster. The Delphian oracle had declared that he would be remembered to the end, although always culminated. Did the entranced Pythia foresee Apollonius and anathematized as the Antichrist simply because too many pagan miracles trespassed upon the infallibility preserves of the Christian clergy? The ante-Nicene father, Justin Martyr, describes how it feels to be tossed about upon the horns of such a dilemma. How is it, he asks, that the talismans of Apollonius have power in certain members of creation, for they prevent, as we see, the fury of the waves and the violence of the winds and the attacks of wild beasts, and whilst our Lord's miracles are preserved in tradition alone, those of Apollonius are most numerous and actually manifested in present facts so as to lead astray all beholders. Thus we see that Apollonius is accredited even by his enemies with all the supernatural power attributed to him by his friends. The latter affirmed his miracles to have been wrought by divine agency, while the former considered him an instrument of the Prince of Darkness, who, through the person of this apparently pious man, ridiculed the true miracles of the Nazarene and his disciples. Apollonius was born in the Cappadocian city of Tyana about AD 16, and from early childhood exhibited exceptional mental powers. Even at 14, he had so outdistanced his teachers that he was sent away to complete his education. At 16, he was attached to the temple of Agi, where he was performing remarkable miracles by the aid of the gods who dwelt in the temple. So great a reputation did he acquire that whenever a man of Cilicia was noted hurrying along the streets, it was common for the townfolk to call out and ask if he was off to see Apollonius. At the age of 16, he took the Pythagorean vows. He had discovered the teachers of his day to be insufficiently informed and their methods too pedantic. Therefore, his own teacher said of him that he soared into the Pythagorean life. In harmony with the old Pythagorean teachings, the young Tyanan assumed the 5 year silence, abstained from all animal food, rejected leather even for sandals, and declared that wine rendered turbid the ether of the soul. As he grew to manhood, Apollonius was of most impressive and commanding appearance. He was tall and of magnificent proportions, with features as perfectly chiseled as those of a Greek god. He never cut his hair, which hung in soft ringlets upon his shoulders and down his back, and he clothed himself in white linen robes of excellent quality. So stately was his carriage and so powerful the forces of his mind that he quelled a corn riot without speaking a word. Being at the time still on his vow of silence, he afterwards caused tablets to be brought to him upon which he wrote out the solution to the problem. Like Pythagoras, Apollonius traveled extensively in every part of the Near East, even going as far as India, where he was received and welcomed by the Brahmin priest as one who had been expected. The monastery where he stopped was probably in what is now called Nepal. In Isis Unveiled, H.P. Blavatsky declares the story of his travels in the Far East as narrated by his constant companion, Damis, to be also an allegorical record of his initiation into the ancient mysteries of several schools of which he was an illustrious adept. This narrative is perpetuated in the Philostratus, a work compiled under the patronage of the Empress Julia Domna, wife of Septimus Servius. At that time, the entire imperial house was concerned with the occult sciences and held Apollonius as little less than a god. It is written of Severus that he placed the statue of Apollonius in his oratory together with those of Jesus Christ, Abraham, and Orpheus, and was accustomed daily to perform religious ceremonies before them. See Lampridius. Apollonius influenced the destinies of the Roman Empire through 5 of its rulers with whom he came in personal contact, namely Nero, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian, and Nerva. He was in Rome at the time Nero issued his famous decree forbidding philosophers to remain in the city. During this stormy period, Apollonius used extreme care never to become involved in the political intrigues which were corrupting the imperial state. Those days, no one was secure, however, and Tigellinus, Nero's private inquisitor, caused the philosopher to be arrested and thrown into prison on the charge of treason against the person of the emperor. The war of wits between these two men must have been sharp indeed, for Tigellinus did everything in his power to force the Tyanin to compromise himself. Like Jesus, Apollonius was faced with dangerous questions, and, like the Nazarene, he answered them too well for the Roman state. Tigellinus, finally hoping to force the Pythagorean into some damaging admission, asked pointedly, "Apollonius, what do you think of Nero?" The crafty inquisitor waited for the answer. He knew Apollonius could not honestly speak well of the imperial debauchery. Yet if he in any way belittled him, his life would be forfeited. The answer given by Apollonius was exemplary. "My dear Tigellinus, I think better of him than you do, for you think that he ought to sing, and I think he ought to remain silent." At last, the charges against Apollonius were duly drawn up. He was brought before the judicial body, and his accusers came forward, unrolling the scroll of the complaints, upon which the detailed account of all his presumed treasons had been carefully noted and dishonestly padded. But Apollonius outwitted them all, for when the scroll was opened and presented to the court, the words suddenly faded from view, leaving it blank, and the court dismissed the case for lack of charges. The philosopher, however, decided discretion to be the better part of valor and departed from Rome immediately afterwards, resuming his travels among the various centers of learning in Greece and Egypt. In Alexandria, he met Vespasian and discussed with him the responsibilities of state. Later, the Emperor Titus sent him a message requesting the privilege of conferring with him at Tarsus. The highest tribute ever paid Apollonius was bestowed by this same Titus. Soon after his elevation to the throne, Titus received a letter from Apollonius in which he counseled moderation in the government of Rome. The new emperor replied, "In my own name and in the name of my country, I give you thanks and will be mindful of those things. I have indeed taken Jerusalem, but you, Apollonius, have captured me." When nearly 8 years of age, Apollonius returned to Rome to confront the Emperor Domitian, whom he regarded as a tyrant and unfitted in every way for so high and responsible a station. Almost immediately upon his arrival in Rome, Apollonius was thrown into prison again, this time accused of being an enchanter or sorcerer. While in prison, it is recorded that one of his jailers asked the philosopher how long it would be before he was liberated. "It will be tomorrow if I depend upon the judge," replied Apollonius, "but this very instant if I depend upon myself." With these words, he drew his arms through his fetters without opening them, and smiling remarked, "You see what a great measure of liberty I enjoy." He then replaced the fetters and, seating himself, sank into a philosophic reverie, oblivious both of time and place. The following day he appeared before the tribunal. The emperor himself was present, gazing with mingled fear and awe upon the majestic person of the sage. Again he was questioned, and each time his answers were of such lofty nature and spoken with such strength and character that the emperor rose in his seat and declared Apollonius had committed no wrong and should be acquitted of every charge against him. Among the questions asked by the tribunal were the following: "Apollonius, why do men call you God?" "Because," answered the philosopher, "every man who is good is entitled to that appellation." Another question: "Apollonius, how did you foretell the plague at Ephesus?" "By living on the lighter diet than most other men," replied the sage. Domitian ordered Apollonius to be detained in Rome that he might discuss with him some of the weightier problems of imperial life. Apollonius expressed his regrets at not being able to remain. Facing the emperor, he drew his cloak around him, saying, "You can detain my body, but not my soul, and I will add, not even my body." Having uttered these words, Apollonius vanished in a flash of light from the midst of the tribunal, which miracle he performed in the presence of several thousand witnesses. An hour later, he met some of his friends in the cave of Puteloi. Nope. Putello. I can't say it. Puteoli, near Vesuvius at the time of full 3 days' journey from Rome. Commenting upon the acrobatic feats of Apollonius, H.P. Blavatsky thus explains his disappearance. Investigation would have shown that this physical body, having become invisible by the concentration of akasha about it, he could walk off unperceived to some secure retreat in the neighborhood. In an hour afterwards, his astral form appeared at Puteoli to his friends and seemed to be the man himself. Apollonius was at Ephesus at the time of the assassination of Domitian. Philostratus tells us that he was in one of the small groves in the environs of the city discoursing upon the mysteries of nature, when suddenly he stopped speaking and started forward 3 or 4 paces, cried out in a loud voice, "Strike the tyrant, strike." It was later ascertained that Domitian fell at the very instant that Apollonius, beholding the act of Ephesus, narrated it to his disciples. After the death of Domitian, Apollonius, being of advanced age, seems to have disappeared from the pages of history. He sent his disciples away on one pretext or another, even causing the faithful Damas to depart on an errand. While thus alone, he vanished from the sight of men and, entering his tomb, closed the wall behind him. According to others, he was translated into the presence of the gods without death. Apollonius of Tyana should be remembered not only as a magician, but as a truly great philosopher whose life and works produced a profound impression upon the world of his day. While in Asia, he was evidently instructed in the secrets of the Oriental adepts. He possessed a great mantle made of the finest wool, and when he desired to project himself from one place to another or release his astral body, he would either stand or seat himself so that both of his feet were in the middle of this mantle. He would then draw the wooden covering up over him, the ceremony being accompanied by strange invocations well known to Oriental students. When the mantle covered his head and face, the soul would depart out of him and travel in distant places at his bidding, so that he brought back words and descriptions as well as having appeared to people in distant parts. While in India, Apollonius was also presented with a set of 7 signet rings, one for each of the 7 planets and their corresponding days of the week. He changed his ring daily and gained great virtue and strength from wearing the stone of the proper planet at its proper time. We are also told that Apollonius was not a medium, but that in every sense of the word he was an adept or initiate, for it is known that in antiquity mediums were not admitted into the mystery schools. This is said to be the reason Socrates was not permitted to enter sacred orders. Apollonius did not await the pleasure of the demons, but instantly, by his own will and purpose, achieved whatever end he desired. Like nearly all the great, Apollonius had a strong sense of humor and a marvelous ability to estimate human nature. On meeting a glutton who seemed very proud of nothing at all, he remarked, "Why this manner of pride when you only claim for notice is your chance of bursting?" In closing this article, we can do better than to quote from a letter written by Apollonius to the Consul Valerius on the event of the loss of his son. "There is no death of anyone but only in appearance, even as there is no birth of any save only in seeming. The change from being to becoming seems to be birth, and the change from becoming to being seems to be death. But in reality, no one is ever born, nor does one ever die. It is simply a being visible and then invisible, the former through the density of matter, and the latter because of the subtlety of being which is ever the same, its only change being motion and rest."